Philip is a child who grew up in Gloomsbrook. He spends a lot of time on the rooftops of Gloomsbrook, kind of wandering on his own and discovering things about the inhabitants that he shares these observations with Spawn and Shadowhawk over the course of the game. If something's happening in the town, Philip wants to know about it. He wants to see if he wants to understand it. He wants to be able to communicate about it. Maybe he wants to know the secret reasons behind different situations that might happen. He's curious. To me, that is there's a roof is something that is above most. If you think about the layout of a town, you've got streets, and then you've got walls, and then on top of the walls you have roofs, and the roofs are sort of allow kind of bird's eye view of the life within the town. And if you look back at ancient cultures, you see roofs have all of these different types of meanings. In many ancient cultures, roofs were some place that you would just use to sort of stay dry during the monsoon or heavy rain season. Roofs were places where you put your belongings to keep them safe. In the prehistory times, safe from the large prehistoric birds that would pick up larger objects than birds pick up even today. The roof is a place of solitude for Philip. It's also a place of empowerment. If you can imagine two people talking to it in the street, if you were to see it front on, you might not see that one person has their arm behind them, and in that arm is a knife. And if you're on a rooftop, you can see that knife, and you can anticipate that moment when the knife comes out and stabs and kills. People forget how often children were taken from the inside of the house and put onto the rooftop on the outside of the house in order to kind of keep them safe while the parents had to go and do work in the fields, or go to battle with enemies, or to go into a wood shop to carve beautiful ornate pieces of wood art. Oftentimes the parents would return after doing these jobs and take their children down from the roof. But Philip, to me, was a way to answer the question, what if the child was never taken down from the roof? What if the child just stayed up on the roof? How would that child evolve? How would that change the child? How would that make the life of the child different than a child that was remembered and taken down and put back inside? Philip is a lot of things to a lot of people. I have to say that, I got the idea for Philip when I was walking down the street the other day. I was drinking this really good iced tea, and I walked past a group of kids, and there was one kid, and he had like one of those red hats on that say, that say his name. It's like, sometimes you see a kid named like, I don't know, like a kid named Beck. You see like he has a hat and says Beck on it. So, but this was a different name. And the kid in the red hat, he saw me coming by, and he was chewing on something that I couldn't tell what it was. And then he points at me and he goes, "That man doesn't know where he's going." Kids say stuff to me all the time, but no child had ever accused me of not knowing where I was going, and I knew exactly where I was going. I was going to the bus stop to catch a bus. I knew where I was going, but the fact that this kid in a red hat with his name on it had said, "I don't know where I was going," my first thought was, well, you don't know where I'm going, but that doesn't mean that I don't know where I'm going. That's not how it works. That's not how knowledge works. And I really wanted to stop and just take this kid aside and say, listen, the life inside of my head is different than the life inside of your head. And he saw me looking at him, and he said, "Do you know where you're going?" And I said, and I didn't respond because I didn't feel like it was appropriate, because he wasn't my child. I didn't know who he was, but it made me very angry, because here was this little boy on a street corner, surrounded by his friends, and they all were having a great time at my expense, saying that I didn't know where I was going when I knew perfectly well where I was going. I was going to the bus stop. I was going to catch a bus. They didn't know where they were going. They were just standing there. They might have been waiting for another bus, and they might have been waiting for somebody else to come and meet them, and then that larger group of children could have gone to a park where they would dig holes or build build those like trail markers that you learn how to make in Cub Scouts. The trail markers, or you put the trail markers that you make in Cub Scouts, the ones that help you you tie with string. Anyway, I don't know what these kids were doing. All I knew is that one of them was accusing me of not knowing where I was going, and I found that to be a very stirring, if not somewhat hurtful experience, because it's not often that a child is able to kind of shake me up a little bit like that. That really really freaked me out. And I thought about all the different things that I could have said to the child to make him upset. I could have said something really mean to the child that would have also made me feel really smart and made him maybe question his confrontational attitude towards me. It could have made him be like, oh, well, this guy does know where he's going. He does have a rich inner life, and I shouldn't bother him. I should be focused on making my day-to-day experience better, rather than focused on making someone else's experience harder. And that's where the idea for Philip came from.